Hi everybody, welcome to a tutorial from Ups a Daisy Design. Today we're going to talk about making wood earrings. Now we have a list of the supplies on our group page, so we'll talk about them as we go through them, but there is a list available for you on the group page. So you know I've got to show you more than just one way to use these wood earrings, because one, well, that's just not enough. But I also want to show you that you can use your own creativity. You don't have to follow the steps step by step. That's just kind of a starting point for you, but I'm going to show you several different ways that you can make some really pretty wood earrings. So let's start off with the wood that I got. This package came from Michael's. It's actually, they're huge. This teardrop right here is 3 inches. So if that's the size of earring you're looking for, look for that package. I also found some squares that I'm real interested in working with some of the square design. I think my favorite package is probably this one right here. Also from Michael's. It's got circles, it's got ovals, it's got teardrops, it's got some big, some smaller, and then these circles came from Hobby Lobby. So that's what we're going to start out with, but let me show you a couple different techniques you can use with it. The first one is just take your shape and use one of your ink pads. This one just happens to say XO in ink, and just stamp a design on it. That's it. That's all. You could take it one step farther, like I did with this one. This one I just painted white, and then I used my same stamp pad and I made a repetitive pattern across the earring. So now, yes, you can see a couple smudges because I accidentally put it upside down when it wasn't dry yet. So do let it dry, don't smudge it like I did. So that's just another idea that you could use. Next, I took one and I painted it white, and then I used a crackle effect. So I started out with white. There's a couple different crackle products out there. This one and this one have totally different directions. So please make sure you read the back and follow their instructions for their product. But with this one, I painted the white. I let the crackle dry until it was a little tacky, and then I put whatever contrasting color you want with it. And I get a crackle earring. That's kind of neat too. And you can work on your effect as to whether you want more crackle, less crackle. Obviously you can change up the colors. So let's move that out of the way. So that's painting it, stamping it, crackling it. Now let's look at something else here. We can also paint it white and then add a stencil and then paint another color on top of it. So all I did here was I took temporary Cricut vinyl. I created my design on my Cricut, cut it out, and let's see if I can do this without messing it up. And then I took my stencil and I attached it to my earring that I had already painted white. Just put the design on there, kind of matched it up as I needed. Now the trick with this is when you're using your second color, don't brush across the design. What you want to do is kind of tap on it and tamp it down. Make sure before you do that you press good and hard. Make sure that your vinyl is stuck. Then use your paint, go back across, let it dry a little bit, and then go back and peel your stencil off of there, and then you get left with a stencil design. Alright, now let's move on to the craze that everybody's been seeing on our site. The wood with antique and using like a scrapbooking paper. So I'm doing these on the big ones so that you guys can see, but this is what we started out with. So the first step I did was I used the satin Mod Podge and I put it on my shape. You can use strokes or you can tap it as well. If you don't mind seeing the strokes at the end, you can use strokes on it. Oops, used the wrong brush there. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Now, what I also did was I measured my shapes and figured out what size they needed to be, and I had my Cricut cut them out of, well, don't you know, I'd pick one that I don't have one cut out for. Oh yeah, I can make this work. Okay. So I used my Cricut to cut out my shapes. I'm not a very good circle cutter, and so Cricut to the rescue. So put a little bit of Mod Podge down, take my pre-cut out shape, and lay it on there. Now, if you want yours closer to the edge, then go ahead and cut your shape out just a little bit bigger than I did. I'll try to put a stencil guide up on Design Space for you so that you'll have some of these shapes and sizes already ready to go. Now, I like to take this and tap it around the edges of my shape just to make sure it's good and sealed. Now, let that dry. Okay, put that off to the one side. Now this one, put that lid back on. This one I did about 15 minutes ago. So you can still see there's a little white there, but I'm ready. I think I'm good enough. These ones probably did 20 minutes ago. Anyway, take either a nail file, just an old ratty one, or a sanding block that you can get at any of the dollar stores, or you can steal it out of the garage when nobody's looking. Not that I would do that. But if you would like the antique look, what we're going to do is gently just rub on the paper and take some of these edges down a little bit and off, and see how it's starting to kind of come back to the white of the paper. Now, depending on how much you want to do is going to determine how long you do this for and how aggressive you want to be with it. Oops, got a little carried away with it. Took it off of the top edge there. I'm not that worried about it. It did accidentally pull up the paper, so I'm just going to glue that back down. Leave that alone for a minute. Rub some more gently. Might use my sanding block. That's a dirty sanding block. And you're just going to lightly pull up some of the edges. Again, I can take my circle that I did earlier, do the same thing to it. If you don't want that antique look, totally skip this step. And again, you could have put paint underneath this if you didn't want the wood to show through. So it's all up to how you want this to look. Okay, so I think I'm good with both of these, because this is the look I'm going for. Now I'm going to use a product called a gel stain. Shake it up a little bit. I prefer to use baby wipes to put this on. That way it doesn't put too much on at one time. So I'm just going to take a little bit on the baby wipe, and I'm going to gently rub it on there. If you want it only on the edges, then be a little more careful than I am. If you want the stain to be all over your fingers and across the top of it, then be a little less cautious. Okay. If you want it to have a light look, then you could just walk away at that point. If you want it to be darker, then we just keep going. Okay. If you want to completely abandon that and just go back to your paintbrush, that's fine too. Make sure again that you're using kind of a dabbing technique versus just painting it, unless you're okay with some of the lines. See how if I paint it on, you get lines, but if I kind of dab it on, it's not as obvious. That's a little more than I want on there. So I'm just going to take my baby wipe, take it off. So see how it's a little bit of trial and error as to what you prefer to see. Now I have it all over my fingers, but all right, you get the idea. So what I do is, well, don't drop it in there, but let that dry. And then the next step would be to put a hole in it. Now I know that there's been some conversations about how do you get the hole in the top without breaking the wood. Well, I actually used my leather cutter, and what I did was I put a little bit of tape over where I want the hole, and then I just punched the hole. So just so you don't think I used some kind of super magic, I'll do it again. Just put a little tape over it, took my hole punch, just gently squeeze, take my tape off, and my hole. No cracking, no nothing. So I hope that's helped you out with how to make your wood earrings. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to message me, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks, everybody. Well, you knew I was going to forget to tell you something. Last step, once this is dried, either apply another layer of Mod Podge on it, or spray like a clear polyurethane on it just to seal it in. So there's my last little comment.